This is Heliox, where evidence meets empathy. Independent, moderated, timely, deep, gentle, clinical, global, and community conversations about things that matter. Breathe easy, we go deep and lightly surface the big ideas.
I want you to imagine, just for a second, the sound of a metronome. You know, that relentless rhythmic ticking. Tick, tick.
Yeah, dividing time into those perfect little fractions.
Exactly. It's a sound that's, well, it's inescapable. Musicians use it to keep a steady tempo, right? To make sure they don't, rush the beat or fall behind. It's constant, uncompromising.
It never stops.
It never stops. Now, I want you to take that ticking sound and replace it with a physical motion. Specifically, a swipe of your thumb across a piece of glowing glass. Left, right, left.
Right. The modern heartbeat.
The digital heartbeat of the modern era, honestly. Because, according to the data we're unpacking today, the average user of a dating app performs that exact evaluative motion, looking at a human face and swiping approximately 140 times every single day.
Which is just, when you pause to actually visualize that number, it completely recontextualizes what we are doing on our phones.
It really does.
Think about it. If you were sitting in a coffee shop, right, and 140 people walked in, one by one, stood in front of your table for, 3 seconds.
Oh, man, that sounds like a nightmare.
Right, and you had to point left or right to indicate whether you found them physically worthy of your time. The cognitive and emotional load of that would be staggering.
You would leave that coffee shop completely exhausted.
Exactly, you'd be drained. Yet we do this in line at the grocery store. We do it while waiting for the elevator. It is binary, it is immediate, and it is just relentless.
Welcome to the deep dive.
Yeah.
Our mission today for you listening is to take a microscope to a truly fascinating piece of academic research. It's titled Body Image, From Matches to Mirrors.
It's a brilliant study.
It is. The researchers gathered a group of 118 young adults to try and answer a question that, honestly, it affects almost everyone operating in the modern dating landscape. We are talking about a global swiping ecosystem that boasts roughly 380 million users.
That's a massive ecosystem.
Right. And the question we are exploring is this. How does this massive, hyper-fast, appearance-based environment actually rewire how we see ourselves when we look in the mirror? And here is the part that is going to fundamentally change how you view these apps.
Yeah, this is the core of it.
How does this digital funhouse mirror, distort men and women in completely fundamentally different ways?
Because it's not just about finding a date for Friday night. We are exploring the profound intersection of, modern technology and human self-worth. By their very nature, dating apps force these rapid, almost instantaneous appearance-based evaluations.
Just split-second decisions.
Split second. And what the source material reveals is that this continuous loop of evaluation, it doesn't just change who we date, it actually has the power to alter our psychological baseline.
Wow.
Yeah, it changes the foundational architecture of how we value ourselves, how we perceive our physical flaws and how we interact with society.
So to really understand how deep this goes, I feel like we need to set the baseline. We need to look at the sheer scale of this ecosystem. Because I think it's very easy for someone who maybe doesn't use these apps or who has been out of the dating pool for a decade to just dismiss them as a niche thing, like a game for young people.
Oh, it is absolutely not a niche thing anymore.
Right. The normalization of this technology is staggering. The sources point out that right now, 20% of people currently in committed relationships actually met their partner online through a dating app or site.
1 in 5 relationships.
1 in 5. That is wild.
It has fundamentally replaced the traditional infrastructures of romance. It is no longer the alternative way to meet someone. In many demographics, it is the primary default method.
The default, yeah.
And the projections in the research, they show that these apps are expected to hit 450 million users worldwide by the year 2028. We are looking at a core user base where the average person is between 18 and 34 years old.
So the prime years for identity formation.
Exactly. The prime of their social development. They've been using the apps for at least a year, and they don't just log on once on a Sunday evening. The data shows they are opening these platforms 2 to 3 times every single day.
2 to 3 times a day. Returning to that metronome. Swiping. Now, to understand why staring at 140 faces a day actually, messes with our heads, the study brings up 2 psychological frameworks. And I really want to spend some time here.
Yeah, we need to because these theories explain the why behind the anxiety so many people feel.
Right. So the first is called the tripartite influence model, and the second is cultivation theory. Let's start with the tripartite influence model. What is the mechanism there? Like, how does it actually work in our brains?
So the tripartite influence model was actually developed long before the smartphone era. It was originally designed to understand how traditional media, so magazines, television, movies, how all that impacted our self-image.
Okay, so older media.
Right. And the model essentially posits that there are three main sociocultural forces or influences that transmit messages to us about societal beauty ideals. And those three forces are our peers, our parents, and the media.
Peers, parents, and media.
Yes. From a very young age, these three pillars are constantly feeding us data about what is considered attractive, what is acceptable, and what is valuable.
Give me a tangible example of how those three pillars work together. Because it sounds like a coordinated attack on our self-esteem, but I imagine it's much more subtle than that in real life.
It is incredibly subtle, which is exactly why it's so powerful. Imagine you're a teenager in, say, the late 1990s. Your parents might make offhand, seemingly innocuous comments about their own weight, or maybe they comment on a relative looking good because they thinned out.
Oh, yeah, the classic diet culture talk at the dinner table.
Exactly. That is pillar one. Then you go to school and your peers are constantly comparing themselves to each other. They're praising the kids who hit puberty early or who fit a specific, athletic mold.
Right, the locker room comparisons. Pillar two.
Pillar two. Then you go home and turn on the television or open a magazine and literally every single protagonist, every single person presented as desirable or successful fits a very narrow, highly curated physical ideal. That is pillar three.
So you're just surrounded by it.
Completely surrounded. And the model argues that constant overlapping exposure to these messages, it trains our brains. We internalize these deeply unrealistic beauty standards. We stop seeing them as external pressures.
We just accept them as facts.
We start believing them as universal truths. We begin to believe that achieving this specific, often biologically impossible physique is not just desirable, but absolutely necessary for our self-worth, for our social survival.
Wow. So it's not just, I am looking at a heavily airbrushed model on a billboard and feeling a fleeting sense of jealousy. It's that the billboard, combined with my mom's diet, combined with my friend's comment about my outfit, it completely rewires my definition of what a normal human body is supposed to look like.
That is the internalization process right there. And that actually brings us perfectly to the second framework, cultivation theory.
Okay, let's get into cultivation theory.
Cultivation theory builds on that internalization. It proposes that the more time an individual spends living in a mediated world, meaning a world shaped and filtered by mass media, the more likely they are to believe that the social reality portrayed on those screens aligns with actual physical reality.
Okay, wait. It makes me think of the movie The Matrix.
Yes, exactly.
Like if you're plugged into a simulation where the sky is green and you spend 8 hours a day in that simulation, eventually your brain just accepts that the sky is green. And when you unplug and look out the window at a blue sky, it feels wrong.
That is a brilliant analogy. I love that. If you marinate your brain in a skewed data set, your brain will adapt its baseline to match that data set.
It just recalibrates.
It recalibrates entirely. If you spend hours consuming media where every single person has flawless skin, symmetrical features, zero body fat, your brain gradually shifts the goalposts of what it considers average. Suddenly, the person you see in the mirror, who is perfectly healthy and normal, looks entirely inadequate. Now, if we look at the historical data, even before dating apps existed, these traditional media pressures resulted in massive systemic body dissatisfaction.
Like how massive are we talking?
The research notes that historically, between 20 to 40% of women and 10 to 30% of men experience significant body dissatisfaction.
That is a huge portion of the population.
It is, and this dissatisfaction develops when your negative perception of your physical appearance creates this massive, painful discrepancy between your actual body and your internalized ideal body shape.
Okay, I'm tracking with the Matrix analogy, and I understand how magazines and movies warp our perception. But here's where I struggle, and I think a lot of people listening might be having the exact same thought.
Sure, what is it?
We have had magazines pushing beauty standards for nearly a century. We've had television, we've had movies, we've had Instagram for over a decade. Why is an app like Tinder or Bumble or Hinge fundamentally any different? Isn't a dating app just a digital, slightly faster version of flipping through a fashion magazine?
That is the critical distinction. And honestly, understanding this difference is the key to understanding the entire study.
Okay, lay it on me.
A magazine is a fundamentally passive experience. You consume the image, the model on the glossy page is static, they do not know you exist. You might feel bad comparing yourself to them, but the transaction ends there.
Right, the magazine isn't judging me.
Exactly. Dating apps, however, are highly interactive, and more importantly, they are inherently ruthlessly evaluative. You are not just a spectator looking at models from afar. You are stepping into the arena. You are putting yourself on the chopping block alongside them.
The magazine isn't looking back at you and swiping left.
Exactly. On a dating app, you are simultaneously the consumer and the product being consumed.
That is a terrifying way to put it. The consumer and the product.
But it's true. The platforms use geolocation and your carefully curated pictures to pair you with potential partners in your immediate vicinity. And because there's extremely limited information available, aside from a few photos and maybe a brief, witty bio users are essentially forced to make their appraisals based overwhelmingly on physical appearance.
It's just inherently superficial.
It creates a closed-loop feedback system. It actively reinforces the notion that your physical attractiveness is the absolute primary factor in your romantic and, by extension, social success. You aren't just absorbing a standard of beauty, you are being graded against it in real time, hundreds of times a day.
And the research makes a very specific point to note that this isn't just about the notoriously swipe-heavy apps like Tinder, right? Because I know people who say, oh, I don't use Tinder, that's entirely superficial. I use apps that are designed for real connection.
Yes, the so-called relationship apps.
Right. The study mentions that even on apps that try to be different, the non-swiping apps that use prompts and questions, like Hinge, which, by the way, the data notes was actually the most preferred app among the participants in this specific study.
Which makes sense for this demographic.
Yeah. But even on an app like Hinge, where you answer quirky questions about your weekend plans or your favorite obscure movie, the initial appraisal is still visual.
It is unavoidable. Features designed to encourage nuanced connection like answering a prompt about your ideal Sunday morning. They are incredibly well-intentioned. They are trying to simulate the organic discovery of a personality. But the architecture of the app still dictates that people are fundamentally impelled to make appearance-centered evaluations first.
You can't read the prompt without seeing the face.
Exactly. The human brain, when presented with visual stimuli in a romantic or mating context, will prioritize that visual information. You have to look at the photo to read the prompt. The rapid appearance-based evaluation is baked into the very DNA of the platform, regardless of how many personality questions you answer.
Which brings us to the pain, the real, acute psychological friction of this entire process. The study introduces a term that I think is going to resonate, perhaps very uncomfortably, with anyone who has ever used these apps. It's called appearance-based rejection sensitivity.
Yes, appearance-based rejection sensitivity is a profoundly important concept in modern psychology. It is defined as the dispositional dependency to anxiously anticipate, to readily perceive, and to overreact to signs of rejection, whether those signs are real or purely imagined, based entirely on your physical appearance.
Let's break that definition down because there's a lot packed into it. Anxiously anticipate, readily perceive, and overreact. It sounds like a constant state of hypervigilance.
It is exactly a state of hypervigilance. If you have high appearance-based rejection sensitivity, your brain is constantly scanning your environment for proof that you are physically inadequate.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. And the researchers actually used a 15-item scale to measure the specific sensitivity in the participants. The prompts they use to gauge this are incredibly visceral. They force the participant to vividly imagine the pain of rejection.
Yes, I read through the scale, and just reading the prompts made me tense up.
They're very intense.
For example, they asked the participants to react to this specific scenario. It goes, imagine you post a photo of yourself on a dating app. That's the setup. Then they ask you to rate your level of agreement with two subsequent thoughts. First, how concerned or anxious would you be that your date might be less attracted to you because of the way you looked?
All right.
And second, I would expect that my date would find me less attractive. Just hearing that scenario, you can feel the knot forming in your stomach. It taps into this deep fear of being unmasked as undesirable.
Because it targets a very primal human vulnerability, the fear of social exclusion based on an unchangeable physical trait. If you score high on this scale, the consequences for your daily life are severe.
How so?
You are going to experience significantly greater body dissatisfaction overall. You are going to prioritize your physical appearance in social situations to an unhealthy, obsessive degree. You will engage in constant appearance comparisons, walking down the street and mentally ranking yourself against every single person who walks by.
And I think a lot of people do that without even realizing it.
They do, and you will ultimately feel much more negatively about yourself. What the sources suggest is that the pervasive, relentless focus on looks within dating apps actually amplifies this sensitivity to a fever pitch.
It creates a self-fulfilling prophecy of anxiety. Like, if I send the message and the person doesn't reply, my brain has to come up with a reason why. In the real world, maybe they didn't hear me or maybe they are busy. But on an app, the easiest, most available explanation is my face.
Precisely the dynamic at play. If you don't get a match, or if a conversation fizzles out mid-exchange, the app environment makes it incredibly easy, almost perfectly logical, to attribute that rejection solely to the fact that you weren't physically desirable enough.
Because that's the only data point you have.
Exactly. The environment lacks the nuance of real-world interaction, body language, tone of voice, shared context. All that is stripped away, leaving only the image. Therefore, any failure must be a failure of the image.
The digital funhouse mirror. It takes your deepest, quietest insecurities, puts them on a 6-inch screen, and then algorithmically tests them 140 times a day.
Well said.
Now that we understand the psychological mechanisms at play cultivation theory, the tripartite influence model, and this intense appearance-based rejection sensitivity, we're going to take a short break. And when we come back, we need to look at the actual experiment to see how this plays out in the real world. Because this funhouse mirror, it does not distort everyone the same way. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Before the break, we laid the groundwork for how dating apps mess with our psychology. Let's dive into the methodology of this study now, because it provides a really clear, somewhat terrifying window into the modern digital dating experience. We have a sample of 118 participants.
That's correct. We are looking at 72 women and 41 men, all young adults between the ages of 18 and 34.
The prime demographic.
Yes. These are the digital natives who have, in many cases, never known a dating landscape that didn't involve a smartphone.
And just to give you, the listener, some context on their habits, these participants weren't just casual once-a-month users. They weren't people who downloaded the app, looked at it for 5 minutes, and deleted it. They were spending an average of roughly 44 minutes a day on these apps.
Let's compound that number so we truly grasp the scale of the exposure. 44 minutes a day translates to over 5 hours a week.
Wow.
That is roughly 11 full days a year, 24 hours a day, spent entirely within an ecosystem designed for rapid appearance-based evaluation. That is a massive chunk of cognitive real estate dedicated solely to judging and being judged.
Okay, so here is where the data gets incredibly revealing and honestly a bit mind-bending. When I was reading through the findings, the best analogy I could come up with is that men and women on these apps are essentially playing two completely different games with completely different rules, but they're playing them on the exact same board. Let's start with the female experience. The data paints this really paradoxical picture. It calls it the trap of perceived success.
It is a fascinating and somewhat tragic paradox. When we look at the raw data, the researchers found that the women in the study reported significantly higher appearance-based rejection sensitivity than the men right out of the gate.
Okay, so starting from a place of higher anxiety.
Right. They also showed a greater acceptance of cosmetic surgery, which is a massive point we need to explore later. But here is the critical data point regarding their actual app usage. Women had massively more matches.
The numbers are striking. On average, the women in the study reported having around 41 active matches, 41 people waiting in their inbox. The men, they reported an average of 18. So the women are, by the metrics of the app, winning. They are getting the matches, they're getting the notifications, they're getting the dopamine hits validation.
That's how it appears on the surface.
Wait, hold on. I need to stop you there because my brain is struggling to process the next part of this data. If I log on to an app and I have 41 people who have explicitly clicked a button saying, I am interested in you, my ego is going to the moon.
Naturally.
I would feel incredibly validated. I do not understand how the data concludes that these women feel worse about their bodies. That feels entirely counterintuitive to basic human nature. Explain to me how winning the game hurts you.
It is the most counterintuitive finding in the study until you look at why they are winning and what that winning actually represents. You are assuming that a match on a dating app is a holistic endorsement of a human being.
Well, yeah, I'm assuming it means they like me.
But it is not. For women, the regression analyses in the study showed that perceived success, getting matches, getting messages, feeling like you were doing well on the app, was the most consistent predictor of all negative body image outcomes. From rejection sensitivity to unhealthy weight control behaviors to wanting cosmetic surgery. Success predicted the pain.
Okay, walk me through the emotional timeline of that. How does a match turn into pain?
To understand this, we have to look outside the phone and look at society at large. The tripartite influence model we discussed earlier, it applies different pressures to different genders. Societal standards have historically placed a much heavier, much more critical, and much more unforgiving emphasis on a woman's physical appearance compared to a man's.
Right, the pressure is just fundamentally different.
Exactly. A woman's value, in a broad traditional sociocultural sense, has been unjustly tied to her aesthetic appeal. So when a woman logs onto a dating app and receives a barrage of matches and messages, 41 active matches, it doesn't necessarily feel like holistic validation. Instead, it acts as an intense, overwhelming reinforcement of that societal pressure.
It essentially tells her, yes, the world values you, but only because of how you look.
Precisely. Let's walk through that emotional timeline you asked for. Imagine you are a woman on this app. You get a match, you feel a momentary spike of dopamine. Then they message you. Often that message is exclusively about your physical appearance. Or, even if it's not explicitly about your body, you know that the only reason they are talking to you is because they swiped right on your photo 3 seconds ago.
Because they had to pass the photo test first.
Right. Suddenly, that dopamine sours. The validation mechanisms embedded in the app, the matches, the likes, they reinforce the idea that your physical body is your only currency. They create a hyper-awareness of appearance.
God, that sounds so trapping.
It is. This intense focus on appearance feedback leads to what psychologists call self-objectification. You stop viewing yourself as a complex human being with thoughts and feelings, and you start viewing yourself as an object to be evaluated by others.
Like you're on a shelf.
Exactly. The more successful a woman is on the app, the more sensitive she becomes to feedback. Because the app has unequivocally confirmed that her success is entirely contingent on her physical presentation. The app has proven to her brain that her personality is invisible until her face passes the test.
So it makes her hypercritical of herself.
This heightens self-criticism immensely. She begins to scrutinize every flaw, terrifyingly aware that her 41 matches could disappear if she gains 5 pounds or posts an unflattering photo. She is trapped by her own digital desirability.
That is incredibly heavy. It's like being handed a trophy, but the trophy is made of lead and you have to carry it everywhere you go. So for women, the sheer volume of validation becomes a suffocating burden. They're being crushed under the weight of their own aesthetic currency.
That's a very poetic way to phrase the data, but it's accurate.
Now, let's flip the board. If women are being crushed by the weight of validation, what happens to the guys who are staring at silent phones? Because the data must look entirely different. The men in the study, as we noted, are getting far fewer matches, an average of 18 compared to the women's 41. They're facing a much higher volume of direct or implied rejection.
A significantly higher volume.
But for men, the negative body image outcomes weren't tied to this idea of success or validation. What was the driving psychological force for them?
For men, the psychological toll was tied not to validation, but to attrition. It was tied to what the researchers call engagement behaviors. It was about the grueling, unrelenting grind of the app itself.
The grind.
The data show that for men, negative outcomes like lower body appreciation and heightened appearance-based rejection sensitivity were significantly predicted by things like the frequency of their use, how many minutes per day they were logging on, and the number of dating apps they were juggling simultaneously.
So it's not about how many dates the guys are going on. It's about the sheer exhausting grind of staring at the screen, swiping endlessly, and getting nothing back. The time on task is the poison.
Exactly. And this is where cultivation theory, our matrix analogy, comes roaring back into the picture with devastating effect. Men typically use dating apps more frequently and engage more intensely than women, often pushing through significantly higher levels of silence and rejection. As they spend 44 minutes a day swiping, what are they looking at?
Other people. The competition.
They are continuously exposed to a highly curated, often idealized pool of competition. The algorithm is showing them other highly rated profiles.
The gym bros.
Yep.
The perfectly lit beach photos where the guy happens to have 8-pack abs.
Yeah.
The curated profiles where height is listed as 6'2" and they are holding a puppy.
Yes. Prolonged exposure to this very specific, hyper-competitive, appearance-driven environment leads men to fundamentally overestimate the significance of physical appearance in real-world social and romantic success. Imagine you are a guy sitting on your couch at 11 p.m. You've swiped 100 times, you've gotten 0 matches. What does your brain do with that information?
It panics.
It tries to solve the puzzle. And the puzzle pieces the app provides are the profiles of the men who are presumably succeeding. You look at those idealized male physiques, and you internalize the idea that to even compete in this arena, you must look like the top 1% of the profiles you are seeing.
So it's like a slot machine. The algorithm is the casino.
Mm-hmm.
The men keep pulling the lever, hoping for a payout a match. But the machine rarely pays out. And instead of realizing the game is rigged or that the casino is designed to keep them playing, they think, I must not be strong enough to pull the lever correctly. I need to change myself.
That is a perfect encapsulation. This heightened, cultivated focus on appearance makes them incredibly vulnerable to body image concerns. They are marinating in a data set of idealized male forms while experiencing constant rejection. The conclusion their brain reaches is inevitable. My body is insufficient.
Let me just make sure I have this perfectly clear, because it is the absolute crux of the whole deep dive. The apps provide the exact same user interface for both genders. Buttons are the same. The swipe is the same. The algorithms are universally designed with one singular goal: maximize user engagement, keep the thumb moving.
Yes, engagement is the only metric.
But because men and women enter this digital space carrying completely different societal baggage, different historical pressures, and different gendered expectations, that identical algorithm triggers entirely different psychological vulnerabilities.
That's exactly what the data shows.
For women, winning at the app makes them feel worse, because it reduces them to an object and reinforces the societal pressure that their worth is only skin deep. But for men, just playing the game makes them feel worse, because the endless grind and rejection warps their perception of reality, convincing them they are physically inferior to a cultivated illusion of competition.
You have synthesized the core tragedy of this ecosystem perfectly. The algorithm doesn't care why you are engaged, it just wants you engaged. It doesn't care if a woman is engaged because she is anxiously managing 41 matches, or if a man is engaged because he is desperately swiping to find just one.
Right.
The metric of success for the tech company is time on screen. But the cost of that engagement is paid by the users in entirely different psychological currencies: the punishment of validation for women and the attrition of engagement for men.
The punishment of validation and the attrition of engagement. It is a stunning realization about the tools we carry around in our pockets every single day. We are participating in a massive, uncontrolled psychological experiment.
We really are.
We're going to take one more quick break, and when we come back, we're going to look at what happens when this psychological pressure doesn't just stay in our heads, because it moves from the screen out into the real world, and it literally changes what people do to their physical bodies. Stick around. Welcome back. So before the break, we were talking about the intense gendered psychological pressures of dating apps. But this pressure, it doesn't just manifest as a bad mood or a fleeting moment of insecurity. When you put a human being under that kind of targeted, relentless pressure, something has to give.
Absolutely. The internal pressure eventually demands an external release.
Let's transition into the final and perhaps most alarming section of the data. We're talking about moving from the screen to the scalpel. What are the actual physical consequences of this algorithmic pressure?
This is where the research moves from concerning to genuinely alarming. When body dissatisfaction develops, when that painful gap between your actual body and the idealized body you've internalized from the app becomes too vast to ignore, individuals often engage in risky, maladaptive behaviors to try and close that gap.
Like trying to fix the problem physically.
Yes. They attempt to regain control over their digital desirability by manipulating their physical form.
The study specifically measured what they call unhealthy weight control behaviors. And I want to be clear for the listener, this isn't just about trying a new keto diet or deciding to jog twice a week. We are talking about severe, dangerous metrics.
Very dangerous, clinical level concerns.
The researchers looked at behaviors like fasting for weight control, self-induced vomiting, and the use of laxatives or unregulated diet pills. And the data showed that engaging with these apps, spending more minutes per day on them, and for women having high perceived success, directly correlated with an increase in these dangerous behaviors.
Yes. The correlation is robust. And it is important to bring in some vital nuance here, drawing on prior research mentioned in the sources. specifically a landmark study by Tran and colleagues. The manifestation of this physical alteration varies significantly by gender, mirroring the different psychological pressures we just discussed.
Right, because the ideals are different.
Exactly. While women, driven by the pressure of validation and the historical societal emphasis on thinness, might trend toward behaviors like fasting or purging, the male response takes a different, equally dangerous path.
Right, because the male ideal cultivated on these apps isn't necessarily just thin, it's muscular.
Yeah.
It's the Marvel superhero physique.
Exactly. For men, the drive is for muscularity and physical dominance. The prior research found that men who use dating apps showed a significantly higher prevalence of using anabolic steroids and unregulated muscle-building supplements compared to non-users.
Let's unpack the psychology of that leap, because steroids are intense. If a man is swiping for 44 minutes a day, getting 0 matches, feeling totally invisible, and simultaneously looking at endless profiles of idealized, hypermuscular male competition, the leap to steroids suddenly makes a tragic kind of sense within that distorted reality.
It does make sense within the logic of the Matrix.
He isn't just trying to get healthy, he's trying to build armor for the digital arena. He feels powerless, and the steroid is a chemical shortcut to regaining power in the algorithm.
It is a desperate attempt to alter the physical body to meet an impossible digital standard. The logic, however skewed by the app, is that increasing muscle mass will enhance their success rate and therefore reduce the agonizing sting of rejection sensitivity. It is using a chemical intervention to solve a psychological wound inflicted by an algorithm.
Wow. And the interventions don't stop at diet pills and supplements. The study also utilized something called the acceptance of cosmetic surgery scale. And the findings here are a massive red flag for where our society is heading. Both men and women in the study who used dating apps showed significant positive correlations between their app use and their acceptance of undergoing cosmetic surgery.
The scale the researchers used is quite comprehensive. It measures attitudes across 3 subscales. Intrapersonal, meaning how surgery would make you feel about yourself; social, how it would change how others view you; and the likelihood of actually considering a procedure for oneself.
And what do they find?
What we see is that the pervasive, relentless emphasis on physical appearance within these apps creates a distinct, compounding pressure that contributes directly to a desire for permanent surgical appearance modification.
And we know this isn't just academic theory. People aren't just filling out surveys saying, oh, maybe I get surgery. They are actually doing it. The sources cite data from the American Academy of Facial Plastic and Reconstructive Surgery. Their empirical data specifically points to social photo sharing and app usage as a major driving force for the massive increase in cosmetic procedures over the last decade.
The numbers reflect exactly what the psychology predicts.
We are talking about skyrocketing demand for rhinoplasty nose jobs, Botox, dermal fillers, and facelifts among demographics that historically would never have considered them.
The connection between the screen and the scalpel is undeniable. Let's think back to our metronome. If you are examining your own face through the lens of potential rejection 140 times a day, your perception of your own features becomes warped. Perceived flaws, a slight bump on the nose, a minor asymmetry in the jawline, they become magnified to catastrophic proportions.
You just stare at it till it's all you see.
Exactly. The app acts as a powerful catalyst. It accelerates a user's psychological state from a baseline of, I don't really like how my nose looks in this specific lighting, to a state of absolute conviction. I am actively willing to undergo an invasive medical procedure to literally have a doctor break my nose so that I can optimize my face for better matches and alleviate this constant gnawing anxiety.
It is optimization of the human face for a digital marketplace. It's terrifying when you phrase it like that.
It really is.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, or for your friends, your siblings, your kids who are actively swiping right now? Because we can't just throw our hands up in defeat and say technology is bad. Throw your phone in the ocean. That ship has sailed. These apps aren't going away. As we established, they are projected to hit 450 million users. They are the infrastructure of modern romance. We need a way forward. We need a way to survive the funhouse mirror.
The authors of the study highlight a massive, glaring gap in our current approach to digital literacy and institutional intervention. Right now, if you look at the safety centers or the warning pop-ups on these dating apps, most of the interventions focus purely on physical safety or preventing dating violence, which of course is absolutely vital and necessary.
Right. It's the standard advice. Meet in a public place for the first date. Tell a friend where you're going. Don't give out your financial information, that kind of thing.
Exactly. It's all focused on physical, real-world harm. There is almost zero institutional focus on psychological safety. There is no warning label about body image. There is no pop-up that says, hey, you've been swiping for 45 minutes. Your rejection sensitivity might be elevated right now. Maybe take a break.
A psychological circuit breaker?
Yes. The proposed solution from the research is the development and implementation of gender-specific media literacy interventions.
What does that actually look like in practice? Because media literacy intervention sounds like a boring high school seminar. How do we actually protect people?
It means teaching users, before they ever log on and create a profile, how to critically analyze the environment they are entering. It involves educational resources tailored to the specific gendered vulnerabilities we've discussed today. We can't just give generic advice.
Right, because the traps are different.
Yeah. For women, it might involve explicit education on how the app's validation mechanics, the flood of matches, can exploit societal pressures regarding female beauty standards. It's about teaching them that a match is not a measure of their worth, but a mechanic designed to keep them engaged.
To break that self-objectification cycle.
Precisely. And for men, it might involve awareness of how the algorithm can cultivate unrealistic standards of muscularity and competition. It's about teaching them that the profiles they see are a curated, filtered minority, not an accurate representation of the dating pool.
It's about building self-efficacy. It's about giving them psychological armor before they step into the digital arena, so that when a user, male or female, feels that inevitable pang of rejection or inadequacy, they have the cognitive tools to recognize it. They can stop and say, wait, I feel bad right now, not because I am ugly or worthless, but because I am interacting with an algorithmic artifact designed to exploit my insecurities.
Exactly. They can separate their fundamental human worth from their ELO score on a dating app.
All right, let's bring this all together. We started today with the sound of a metronome. Tick, tick, swipe, swipe. 140 times a day, we are evaluating the humanity of others in fractions of a second, and we are subjecting ourselves to that same brutal evaluation.
It's a relentless rhythm.
Through this study, we've seen how this seemingly simple act of swiping a thumb across glass ripples outward, causing massive psychological tectonic shifts. We've seen that women are punished by the pressure of validation, that the very matches that signal success actually reinforce the suffocating, historically oppressive idea that their worth is only skin deep, leading to intense self-objectification.
The trap of perceived success.
We've seen that men are punished by the attrition of engagement, that the sheer silent grind of the app cultivates an intense, skewed reality where muscularity and appearance are drastically overvalued, leaving them feeling inadequate and invisible.
And chasing impossible standards.
And we've seen how both of these divergent paths ultimately lead to the exact same destination: outward physical harm, driving users to fundamentally alter their bodies through unhealthy diets, unregulated steroids, and even the permanent intervention of a surgeon's scalpel.
It is a profound, albeit sobering, demonstration of how a technological tool explicitly designed to connect us can simultaneously distance us from our own sense of self. The digital mirror we hold up to ourselves every day is, in many ways, fundamentally broken. It does not reflect who we are. It reflects what the algorithm needs us to be in order to keep swiping.
Which leaves us with a final lingering question. Something for you to ponder the next time you or someone you know opens one of these apps while waiting in line for coffee. If we know with peer-reviewed academic certainty that these algorithms are perfectly engineered to tap into our deepest, most gendered appearance-based insecurities, literally altering our diets, driving men to steroids, and pushing women toward cosmetic surgery, what would a dating app algorithm look like if it were optimized for our psychological well-being instead of our attention spans?
That is the question of the decade.
If the metric for success wasn't time on screen, but rather healthy human connection, how would the code change? If the current digital mirror is broken, how do we build one that actually reflects us accurately? Thank you for joining us in this deep dive. We'll catch you next time. Heliox is produced by Michelle Brucker and Scott Bleakley. It features reviews of emerging research and ideas from leading thinkers, curated under their creative direction with AI assistance for voice, imagery, and composition. Systemic voices and illustrative images of people are representative tools, not depictions of specific individuals. Thanks for listening today. 4 recurring narratives underlie every episode: boundary dissolution, adaptive complexity, embodied knowledge, and quantum-like uncertainty. These aren't just philosophical musings, but frameworks for understanding our modern world. We hope you continue exploring our other episodes, responding to the content, and checking out our related articles at helioxpodcast.substack.com.